My name is Daniela Salazar. I am one of the clinical psychologists at the LightHouse. And it is my honor today to be talking about how to raise resilient children with you. We're going to be together for the next, I want to say, 40 to 45 minutes discussing such important topics. And of course, you can write questions in the chat room. I will be more than happy to give you guys 10 minutes at the end of the talk so I can answer some questions specific to raising children in a resilient way and give you strategies and tips that you might need. I won't be able to see the chat while I am presenting, so I will be checking the chat just at the end. So if you have a question that has been answered, just make sure that you erase your questions so I just answer the ones that we haven't been able to discuss within the presentation. What else in terms of housekeeping? This video and this webinar is being recorded, so you can have access to it later on. We will be sending you the recording if you feel that you want to share the content with family members and friends. Please feel free to do that. And this is it. So let me tell you all a little bit about the LightHouse. For those that don't know who we are a well-being center in Jumeirah. We have about 32 different clinicians from all over the world, from different backgrounds. We do therapy from prenatal stages all the way to family therapy. We do a lot of community service by giving these webinars, offering support groups, different trainings. So there's a lot of initiatives and lots of different options that LightHouse does for the community to destigmatize mental health. And I think this is one of our main goals, and especially over the last 2.5 years of COVID, has been to really destigmatize mental health and give information specifically around parenting, mood management, thought management, etc., that could be useful. So I will be able to give you guys specifically today some knowledge around parenting and how to raise children in a resilient way. So let's begin. So for today's agenda, we're going to give you guys a bit of information around child and adolescent mental health, just to get us settled, more acquainted to the importance of resilience. We're going to be discussing really what resilience means and really tease the term out, and talking about why is it that children are not as resilient as they used to. What is it about nowadays that makes parenting so hard? And what are some of the challenges that you all might be facing as parents? We're going to be deep diving into different characteristics or elements of what actually makes resilience in children. And then we're going to be talking about your role specifically. What can you do at home? What are some of the things that will benefit your child's resilience over time? What are some practical tools or activities that you could be using? So I hope that this will be quite a complete and fulfilling conversation that we all will have today. So to begin, an overview of why talking about child and adolescent mental health is so important. And what we have found through research is that a lot of the psychological illnesses actually begin in early adolescent years. As young as 10, 11, 12, we see that adults that are actually coming into the clinic recognize these symptoms really early on in their life. And unfortunately, we didn't have the resources or the knowledge around mental health to seek help at that time. So recognizing that mental health illnesses might actually begin at such an early stage, it is really important to then think back as to what is the role that you want to have as a parent. What is the importance of building this resilience since a really early age so that we can prevent developing mental health illnesses? Now, I'm sure you know this, but we all have mental health, right? Physical health and mental health go together. So Just because you have mental health does not mean you have a mental health illness. They're two different things. And I just wanted to clarify that for you guys. 1 out of 5 people right now, young people, are experiencing a mental health illness. They're struggling with their mood. They're struggling with anxiety. They're struggling with, maybe an eating disorder, an addiction. And these things start usually showing up in pre-teenager years. So having the foundation in your early years is going to be really important. And what we have found is that the earlier we intervene, the earlier we detect signs of mental illness, or actually build the foundations to have positive or healthy mental health, then the treatments will be shorter, the sick leaves at work will be less, the opportunity of recovery will be more. So we're really vouching for this early intervention, early detection with our children. What tends to happen because of the stigma around mental health is that individuals with a diagnosis, with a mental health illness, start being bullied, start feeling isolated, start feeling stigmatized and discriminated against, and they feel lost and they feel ashamed or guilty to struggle emotionally. And so this gets this idea of being inadequate or inappropriate because you're struggling with a mental health illness sometimes starts from our society itself, our home environment, our peer relationships. So that's why it is our job to really prevent these children to feel this way and to find hope and to build the grit to jump back from unfortunate events, from negative thinking styles, and really take care of their mental health on a daily basis. We know that suicide is the second leading cause of death among children between 15 and 29 years of age. And we know that with social media, this information is getting disseminated faster than we think. And so, we need to start thinking back as to, okay, how am I teaching my child to move past these uncomfortable feelings, or getting a bad grade and thinking they're not good enough, or unhealthy relationships that put them down, so that we can avoid ending in really tragic situations. So what are some of the sort of formal definitions of resiliency? It's the process of effectively negotiating, adapting, or managing significant sources of stress or trauma. So you're not getting rid of it. You're not avoiding suffering. You're just effectively negotiating, adapting, managing, coping. You have assets and resources that are going to make you deal with these struggles in a healthier way. So the term resilience actually comes from the Latin word resilio, right? Or to jump back from something that's uncomfortable, something that's inadequate. It's also known as a process of overcoming the negative effects of risk exposure, coping successfully with traumatic events, or avoiding the negative trajectories associated with risks. So you're also learning how to make critical decisions. You're also learning to identify when you're not feeling okay and try to get the tools and the personal resources that you need to cope with that stress. A lot of researchers actually think of resilience as part of their emotional intelligence. And thousands of studies have shown that the more emotional intelligence you have, the more successful you will be. It's not really about the studies and the academic performance as itself. It really is about the way you manage your own emotions and you relate to others in a workplace and in your family environment. So developing that emotional intelligence as a child is going to be of utter importance. So what does resilience look like? So we're going to be talking about different things. So we're going to be discussing realistic optimism, which is the idea that life is good, that life has so much to give, that life isn't just about happiness, but actually it is about embracing other feelings that are going to be present in our daily lives, like worry, anxiety, anger, sadness, and all of those feelings are going to be welcomed, but it doesn't take away from the positively view of life. We have things to look forward to, even though today I'm feeling a little bit down, even though today I'm not feeling at the top of my game. We're also going to teach children to face fear. We are going to almost accept it, be curious about it, understand what type of thoughts we get when we feel worry and we feel fear. That's a little bit of what resiliency actually looks like. We're going to have our value system quite set. We know who we stand for. We know what our family values are. We're going to be certain that even though this decision might be hard to do or make, I'm doing it for the right reasons, for the person that I want to be. We also have a support group, a social support group where I feel safe, where I do not feel judged, where I can take chances on my friends and on my family, and I will be seen with care and love and compassion rather than judgment and contempt. I will have resilient role models. I will see my parents fall down and get up. I will see a safe home environment where all emotions are going to be welcomed, and I will be learning about my emotions at home. I will be active. I will have enough physical activity to stimulate my brain, to keep me going, to keep me motivated, to keep me healthy. We know that through movement, where it's not just for the sake of, feeling good and physically, it's about mentally having a clear space to make decisions and feeling like you have a healthy way of coping with uncomfortable feelings. So early on, giving your child a space to practice a sport is going to be really important. The same happens with brain fitness, and brain fitness are exercises around memory and puzzle building and organizing and planning things, just the ability to really organize information in your mind can start really early on. And of course, life doesn't happen as planned a lot of the times, right? There's a lot of changes in a daily routine with travel. Definitely COVID taught us the power of being flexible. So teaching that on a daily basis to our children is going to be important and is going to help them become more and more resilient. We want to make sure that we're tying their everyday actions to a meaning, to a purpose, to the long-term consequences of their behavior. What we see now is that children are more focused on the short-term consequences and the short-term gains rather than the long-term effect of things. And of course, the internet, social media hasn't necessarily helped, but this is something that as a family, we want to really encourage. So these are just some of the components of what we would see resiliency look like in children. Now, there's some core virtues and character strengths, of course, that we want to be promoting. And I think the ones that I really want to focus on or mention are honesty, justice, determination, consideration, and love. So let's start with honesty. Honesty is allowing your child to feel safe enough to always tell you the truth. Really early on, you see children learning how to lie out of the fear of getting in trouble and feeling that the love of a parent is going to be conditional based on their behavior. And we want to make sure that really early on, we're actually teaching our children that they can make mistakes, that they might not follow the rules sometimes, but your love will never be in question, that you will love them unconditionally. And it might mean that you are disappointed, that you're angry, but it doesn't mean that you're going to stop loving them. And we need to very, very, very clearly state that and reassure that on a daily basis. So that will help your child feel motivated to be the honest person that they want to be. The next one is justice. And we're going to be talking about the importance of making amends. And when you make a mistake, that's perfectly fine, but how can I repair? How can I put myself in that other person's shoes and actually make them feel better? Is it going to be through an I'm sorry card? Is it going to be about maybe doing something out of care for them? Is it about just being with that person and letting them know that you're sorry for letting them down, but you're there and you want to make it up for them? You know, there's a way where we foster values like justice through teaching your child to make amends when they've made a mistake. And that's super important. Determination. We want to make sure that our child embraces challenge. We want to make sure that they're trying something a little bit difficult each day, and you're holding their hand along the way, and you're allowing them to feel that challenges are exciting, that it's not about overcoming the challenge necessarily. It's about embracing the challenge and noticing that through difficulty and practice, you can gain skills. You have grit. You're able to fall down and stand up again. You're able to, to really be a role model for your other siblings. You're able to self-regulate because you're not going to let yourself go to your frustration or your anger or your sadness. So this is another value that we want to make sure that we're teaching our children, and that is of determination. The next one is consideration. I believe that the value of consideration, it's important because it builds the opportunity to train empathy and compassion, the ability to put yourself in that other person's shoe, to really connect with what is it like to feel sadness or frustration or anger. And as a child, we need to be taught these things through storytelling, through role playing. That would be really important. And of course, lastly, the value of love, feeling that you have a warm and safe place with your parents, that you have fun, that you have just a physical space where you feel held in times of need is really important. So let's be really generous with the amount of affection we also give our children. So this is just a wheel that I like sharing with you all, because it really exemplifies all of the values that we can be teaching our children in different areas. So in terms of wisdom, the love for learning, perspective taking, good judgment, being curious, being creative, all of these things are character strengths that we want to make sure that we are putting into practice with different activities for our children every day. So now we talked about what resilient children look like, but I want to actually emphasize now, what do low resilient children look like? What does that look, how can I tell if my child is struggling with low resilience? And I think the first thing I would say is we want to make sure that low resilience isn't just about a few sad days. It's almost the ongoing difficulty that children have to face challenges, to try new things, the rigidity, the inability to cope with big feelings. So you're going to see a child that is withdrawing constantly, that is moody, that has actually defiant and sometimes risky behavior, that is quite angry, resentful, overly clingy, distracted. And of course, we want to make sure that we're seeing this in a period of time where we have our alarms a little bit going off and saying, I don't like the fact that my child at the age of 7 is so clingy to me. I want him to feel okay with having independence. I want him to enjoy playing on the playground with other peers his age. Or, I see that my child is really angry and doesn't deal with losing a game well, or doesn't deal with me changing plans. And I want him to become more flexible and less angry. And you see this is becoming a bit of a difficult situation at home. We might be talking about a lack of resilience here as well. That can be taught. And I think the beautiful thing here is that even though humans are very adaptable and we are able to understand different environments need different behaviors, this can be taught. And it can be taught by you as a parent, by a clinical psychologist, by an occupational therapist. But I think the most valuable way of learning this is through parents modeling resilience themselves. So these are just some symptoms or some characteristics that I would love for you to look into and just focus with your children to see if there is a lack of resilience. Now, to add to why these things happen, I want us to self-reflect as parents. Am I bubble wrapping my children? What I mean by that is, are we solving their problems? Does my child come home with maybe a problem with a friend, and am I giving them the solution right away? Am I telling them what they need to be doing? Am I consistently watching out for dangerous situations they might be in? Am I jumping the gun and letting them know what they need to pack for the next day? What is my relationship when it comes to giving my child independence? We make their problem our problem, right? We don't want to see a child feeling sad or feeling overwhelmed or feeling angry. That hurts us. So we want to take that pain away from our child, and we then let their problems become ours. And we don't let them own their feelings or take responsibility for their actions. We might be calling the teacher, making excuses for our child, or we might be excusing our child from other parents or other children, and we're not letting them actually take responsibility for their actions, feelings, and behaviors. Another reason why children are less resilient is because they have a sense of entitlement, where they're the center of our universe. We live for them, we work for them, we sacrifice everything for our children, and that's beautiful. But when children have that notion, when they know that, then it's really hard for them to value struggle or consistency or dedication or the worth of many privileges that they might be having. So just consider, how much is my child the center of my universe? And does he know that, or does she know that? Because that's going to be another consideration that might be not letting your child become as resilient as you want them to. And of course, then we have sometimes the idea that our children always need to think positively and always need to seek happiness, and they can't feel sad or anger, or they can't feel demotivated, and we push for those positive feelings a bit too much. And what we call this is toxic positivity. Actually, what we want to teach our children is that every feeling is okay, and that, you know, having a sad day is part of being human. And actually, if we're always looking for happy days, happy moments, we're going to feel frustrated, because life isn't just about happy, easygoing moments. It's actually about challenges and learning how to cope with situations that don't go our way or things we can't achieve. So let's make sure that we are embracing all the feelings and all the thoughts that, you know, school might bring, extracurricular activities might bring to our children. And of course, they have a lot of pressure at school to achieve, to compete against other children. And this high pressure can also make them more vulnerable to give up, to not see the point in trying. They might feel like their efforts are not recognized enough. Maybe they feel like the home environment is quite strict, and we don't see the positive of the effort and the dedication that they're putting in. We're just focusing on results and targets, and that might also be a reason why children are becoming less resilient nowadays. So we've talked about what resilience is, what resilience might look like in a child. Now I want us to think about, what is your role as parents in raising resilient children? So we're going to be talking about 15 different elements of resilience. Now, this has been a study that has been surveyed for more than 1,200 families and children around the world. And we were analyzing, what are the different elements that make children stronger, that make children more emotionally aware, that make them sort of get up when they're struggling. And we're going to talk about different components. The three main components is the characteristics that children have or they get from their family environment. I'm going to call this the I have characteristics. Then we're going to move into the belief of who they are, the belief that they're strong enough, the belief that they're good enough, the belief that they're smart enough. So this is the I am. And then we're going to be talking about skills, things that they are capable of doing. And we're going to talk about these in the realm of I can. So a child might not need these 15 elements of resilience that I'm going to be discussing, but they do need to have a strong sense of who they are, of what they have, and the abilities that they can have. So we want to make sure that all of these I have, I can, and I am characteristics to some degree are strengthened in our parenting styles. So the first 5 are going to be around what the child feels they have at home. They have people that trust them, who love them no matter what. They have a sense of limits and boundaries, because through boundaries, they feel safe. They feel like they're cared for. They have people who show them how to do things positively. They have a positive leadership at home. They have people who want them to learn and try things on their own. They have people to care for them when they're sick, or that when they're in danger, they are going to be taken care of. So they have that certainty. And they believe that they are lovable, that they're liked, that they're worthy, that they are glad to be able to do things for other people. They respect themselves. They know what physical boundaries they need to follow. They know what religious beliefs they stand for. They know what responsibility looks like. And they know that feelings do not last forever, that feelings actually are short-lived, and other feelings will come after that. And they have the ability and the skill to talk about the things that frighten them. They have the skill to find ways to solve their own problems on their own without having to ask adults for help all the time. They also know they can control uncomfortable feelings and thoughts. And they also know that when it's a good time to talk things out with that safe adult or with a friend. And asking for help doesn't make them weak. It actually makes them stronger. So these are the knowledge, the ideas that we want our children to start developing over time through our modeling. I love this quote. It says, "It is a central paradox of contemporary parenting. In fact, we have an acute, almost biological impulse to provide for our children, to give them everything they want and need, to protect them from dangers and discomforts, both large and small. And yet, we all know to some level that what kids need more than anything is a little hardship, some challenge, some deprivation that they can overcome, even if it's just to prove to themselves that they can." So this is talking about an initial urge that we as parents might have versus the need of your child as they're developing. So here are some considerations for you as parents. And I want to talk about these considerations a little bit more in detail, because we have this strong belief that parenting is something you should know. And actually, parenting is so difficult. Every child is so different. There is no manual to parenting. There's lots of books on parenting, lots of general guidelines, but I would say every child, it's its own universe, and what works with one doesn't work with the other. So frustration as a parent is normal. Feeling lost as a parent is normal. Feeling helpless at times and depleted and with low energy is normal as a parent. So don't try to do this alone. Reach out for help when you need it. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. I think more than thinking about wanting to be perfect is knowing that you tried your best, that you were curious about getting more information, that you asked for help when you thought you needed it, that you were vulnerable enough to say, I can't do it right now. That is what's going to make you an amazing role model and an amazing parent. The fact that we are working parents and we want a balance, that's going to be a really frustrating idea for you, because that's a myth. There's no such thing as work-life balance. We need to be balancing life. We need to be giving importance to some things in our life, but we can't say we're going to be able to give everything the same amount of importance. It's just not doable. There are going to be days where you won't be able to see your children as much if you're a working parent. Other days where you might not feel as productive at work because you're focusing on your children. So it definitely is going to be a balancing act. The fact that you're giving care and consideration and importance to both is good enough. The other idea is that parenting just comes so naturally and effortlessly, and actually we need to be taking care of ourselves first, right? How do I fill my own cup? How am I building self-awareness? Because if I don't know how I'm feeling, if I'm not conscious of how my cup is being is being reduced and triggered, I will not have enough energy to focus on what my child needs. I'm going to be more irritable, less available, more reactive, maybe more judgmental, and I will then have lots of feelings of guilt and shame. So really, self-care is an act of service, right? It's not selfish. You will be the best parent you will ever be if you give yourself enough time. The working parent guilt consumes a lot of time. We feel like we're not spending enough time at home. And this idea of having, again, this balance between children and work is just not feasible to have. It's not realistic. So we really need to rethink the idea of work-life balance. More than quantity, it's about quality. The quality of the time that you're spending with your child, whether it's 5 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, it's really how present you're going to be with that child. Children remember as they see, not as they're told. So you can be talking about the ideal situation you want your home to be. You can be talking about what you expect your children to do, but really they will do as they see. And they will remember how the environment at that time was feeling more than actually what was going on at that time. So it's really about bringing it back to you as a parent and recognizing, how am I dealing with discomfort? How am I dealing with stress? Am I becoming more self-aware of what my triggers are? Do I have someone to talk to? And then you can definitely see some changes in the way you parent. There is no such thing as reaching perfection. So just good enough is going to be okay. Yeah. We want to make sure that we teach children that uncomfortable emotions are going to be there, that things will not always go as planned, and that's okay. So we can teach them what to expect sometimes from situations, right? So for example, what I love teaching, for example, children Christmas time is sometimes they can get disappointed if they don't get the gift they asked for. And so anticipating them of what to expect, right? You might talk about, holiday season, maybe not meeting their expectations and possible feelings that might come up. Just starting to normalize that not feeling great is part of being human. And actually what we need to then build are the skills to overcome those difficult emotions rather than trying to avoid anger or sadness in the first place. What we call non-cognitive skills are actually personality traits, which can be taught. So personality traits such as curiosity, giving people the benefit of the doubt, becoming cognitively flexible, allowing feelings to just be there instead of running away from them is going to be the aim, basically, in our parenting. Instead of just preventing them to meet danger, it's teaching them the skills to recognize when danger is there and giving them the skills then to self-soothe and make decisions that are aligned to their values. And of course, this takes practice. It takes making mistakes. It takes, as a parent, for you to recognize in front of your child that you're not perfect, that you're sorry, that it hasn't been a good day for you, that you also have big feelings, and that you also need to work on managing your own big feelings as well. And through that vulnerability, you build connection, you build safety. So these are some examples that I want to maybe teach you how to teach your child emotional regulation. Now, emotional regulation is a really important skill we want to be teaching our children, because uncomfortable thoughts and emotions are going to come our way on a daily basis. So we want to make sure we're always validating those uncomfortable feelings and recognizing them by labeling the emotions. So you might say things like, I can see that you don't like this. I can see that you were expecting a different outcome. I get the feeling that you're not very happy with our plan. I recognize that this might bring a lot of anger to you or frustration. I can see that you're worried about what might happen. So you're validating, you're normalizing whatever feeling comes up. And then we want to soothe and ground them through their senses. So we might ask them to name 5 things that they see when they're really emotionally triggered. We want them to maybe touch 4 things and describe the texture of those 4 things. We might ask them to just focus and listen for 3 things that they hear in their environment. We might ask them to smell 2 things and to describe that smell to you, and then taste 1 thing and really just focus on the texture in their mouth and the taste of whatever they have around them. And you start almost allowing them to just zoom in their different feelings, so that actually that uncomfortable emotion or that uncomfortable thought doesn't seem as important anymore, because they're choosing to focus on their senses and grounding them to the present moment. And that's a beautiful, easy way where you will be teaching your child to emotionally regulate. Now, mindfulness isn't just the exercise of not having any thoughts or sitting still. Mindfulness is actually just awareness training. So you can do a mindfulness activity while you're cooking and just have your child name the texture, what they see, how fun it is. Recognize that, a cookie starts, and I'm making the example of making cookies, but a cookie starts as a cookie dough ball, and then it melts and it flattens, and you just start observing what is happening in the room. How is my cooking actually making me recognize things that I didn't recognize before? That's what mindfulness activities are all about. Using humor. I think we don't laugh enough. We don't play enough. And a lot of times we want to make sure that we laugh about our own mistakes, that we teach our child to take things a little bit more lightly and to be silly. Maybe at home having a day where it's the making mistakes day or doing things backwards day. And that allows your child to normalize that mistakes are part of life, and we will get up and try it again next time, and trying different things that might work next time, learning from our past events. Of course, we're going to be mindful of, risk and dangerous situations, but in general, really it is about promoting making mistakes and you being a safe adult for them to go to. Remembering the positive events during the day, just highlighting the positive. Our brain is just pruned to always remember the negative events, to always jump to conclusions and think about the negative outcomes of what might be happening tomorrow. So it's counterintuitive to just think about the positive little things that they achieved, that they did during the day. So let's make sure that we are promoting that a little bit more. When we are teaching our children to take risks or to make mistakes, we're actually more than encouraging them to make mistakes, is recognizing that they can get back up, right? So share your failures, share your experience about making mistakes every day. You might even, be cooking and you put too much salt in your food, and you might say, oh, I made a mistake, I put too much salt. But you know what? Actually, I kind of like this with a little bit more salt, because you can taste this part of the cooking a little bit more. Oh, actually, I didn't like the amount of salt I put in this food. Maybe next time I'll try putting a little bit less. And it's not a big deal. You're recognizing that you're human, that you aren't perfect, and your child will feel motivated to try and take a chance on you by making mistakes. Having the routine to doing something out of your comfort zone. So that might be as silly as doing an exercise that feels a little bit uncomfortable. That might be changing the routine in which you take a shower and putting the soap on first rather than the shampoo. It might mean sitting in different seats in the dinner table and recognizing what are other things that you see from that position at the dinner table. Little things that just make that child feel a little bit uncomfortable but safe enough in your environment will also help. Our children sometimes become quite negative and quite competitive at school when they can't achieve something. So we want to make sure we're teaching the model of the growth mindset. So the power of yet. You can't ride a bike yet. You will get to ride a bike, but you don't have it mastered yet. I don't know how to multiply yet. So making sure that we're adding the word yet at the end of the negative, maybe criticisms they give themselves, or the comments that you're giving your child, is going to be quite useful. Reminding them also that back 6 months ago, back a year ago, back 2 years ago, they were the same person, but you know what? They've evolved, they've changed, they've grown, they've learned from their mistakes. So talk about, what were some of the risks that they've taken in the past, and see how they've progressed, right? If you have a child that has been a really good football player, just remind them of where they came from. Remind them, how difficult it was for them when they were little to hit the ball, have eyeball coordination, and now they're in this amazing soccer club where they're competing against other schools. So just remind them it's been a process for them would be useful. Connecting with a meaning and purpose, I think for anyone, is going to be important when it comes to building resilience. Just reminding yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? I know that sometimes for children and teenagers, having a test or having their mock exams or, having a quiz is really dreadful and really scary, and it's easy for them to give up. But just connecting to that meaning and purpose. What does it mean for you to, complete this test? What do you want to get out of completing this test? Why is completing school important to you? Not to the parent, to the child. And it just gives them the authentic ingredient of what we say authentic happiness is, because it really connects to a personal value rather than making mom happy, making the teacher happy. Allowing them to contribute to society, donate, help a friend, having a pen pal in a different part of the world, or helping a family member, recognizing that as young as 5, 6, 7, they can be helpful. They can have an active role in society. They're seen is also going to help them build resilience. When you give them an activity that they have to overcome. Let it be an extracurricular activity that's new, let it be a math task, let it be whatever it might be. Let them try that hard thing a couple of times. Don't let them give up, right? So we're going to recognize the challenge and just say, we are going to try something difficult every day. And by the end of the day, we actually want to ask them, what was the one difficult thing you tried today? What was a bit challenging? And we're going to promote that challenged mindset. I want to overcome something difficult. I tried a hard math exercise and I did it. I was able to master a skill in my football class. And if they weren't able to master it that day, okay, you still did something challenging. You tried, you engaged in not giving up. You were able to ask a question. You were able to give that skill a different chance, and then you finally did it after a couple of days. So you start making them own the fact that they're taking these challenges. Interviewing other people in the family that they find successful, that they admire, asking them what their journey has been like, or having that family member talk to them about the difficult moments they had to overcome and the fears that they also had as a model is important. I've talked about this a lot, but it's just allowing them to tolerate discomfort rather than jumping and giving them a solution when they're feeling upset, when they're feeling sad. It's just sitting with that feeling. Tell me more about that anger. Where do you feel that anger? How big is this anger? If you were to give this anger a name, what would it be? What color would anger have if we were to draw the anger or the sadness or the frustration? What is anger telling you right now? So we're not running away from the feeling. We're actually becoming more curious, more tolerant, more patient. We're allowing them to sit with discomfort. We are teaching them how to stay calm and curious despite of the discomfort. These are some conversations that would be useful to have. If they're having a difficult day and they weren't able to achieve something, just asking them just a simple question. What was the hard part? What was the hardest part of this challenge? Okay, so we can address that one thing. Usually children are going to generalize. Everything was hard. Okay, out of everything, what was the hardest bit? And you go back and rein them in, having them identify the little bit that made it a little bit worse, a little bit more challenging is important. So they start building awareness of what it is they're struggling with. And lastly, in the end, though this research had a surprising effect and made me more relaxed as a parent, when Ellington was born, I was very much caught up in the idea of childhood as a race. The faster the child will develop skills, the better he does on tests, the better he'll do in life. Having done this reporting, I'm less concerned about my son's reading and counting ability. Don't get me wrong, I still want him to know stuff, but I think he'll get there in time. What I'm more concerned about is his character, or whatever the right synonym for character when you're talking about a 3-year-old. I want him to be able to get over disappointments, to calm himself down, to keep working at a puzzle even when it's frustrating, to be good at sharing, to feel loved and confident and full of a sense of belonging. Most importantly, I want him to be able to deal with failure. That's a difficult thing for parents to give their children, since we have a deep in our DNA, the urge to shield our children from every kind of trouble. But what we're finding now is that trying to protect our children, we may be actually harming them by not giving them the chance to learn to manage adversity. Okay, we might be harming them. And character, even more than the IQ, is really what leads to real and lasting success. Right. So at the end, what we're saying is that resilience really is the equivalent of emotional intelligence. And we really want to foster that rather than having the aim for your child to multiply or learn certain skills. It's about how are they coping when they struggle, when they have a challenge, when they can't do things, because that's what life is going to be about. Overcoming challenges. All right. this was it for today, but I'm more than happy to read your comments, see your questions. I know that this is such a passionate topic for a lot of you, for myself, and I want to make sure that I am being as helpful as possible. So I'm going to stop sharing and maybe read a couple of comments that you have, questions that you might have, so I can help. Are there any books, activities available so that we as parents can teach our children, and how and what can I teach my 3-year-old? Yes, there is a book that I love from Dan Siegel called The Whole Brain Child. I really, really like this book because it tells us a developmental approach to how to build resilience. It teaches us what a 3-year-old can do, what they can't do, where their mind's at. I think as young as children, we can start teaching them about empathy. We can start showing them pictures of different emotions. We can start talking about emotions in ourselves and saying, you know, mommy had or daddy had a day where he had really big feelings and mommy has to breathe or take a step out of the house because she's not feeling well. Whenever you want to step out and you want to go to your room and relax, please do that. It's okay to have overwhelming feelings. So you can start as young as 3 when they have that verbal repertoire to really teach them about feelings and normalizing uncomfortable feelings and thoughts and giving them skills to self-soothe and recognize that a feeling is not long lasting, that it will go away, and that you do have the skills to soothe yourself rather than seeking a parent to soothe you. Can not making friends easily be interpreted as low resilience? It could be. The fact that they are intolerant to not making friends or they're not making friends themselves might mean that they don't have enough self-awareness, or they might not have enough social awareness, right? How is their behavior interrupting the friendship? Or vice versa, how is their negative thoughts about friendships interrupting the ability of them being able to have friends? So definitely could be a component of resiliency. Yes. Sometimes when I do not solve my child's issue immediately and want my child to figure out things before helping, my parents get emotionally saying that don't put your child through this. How can we tackle this positively? Yes. A lot of times our parents come from different, I guess, perspectives of parenting, right? And grandparents don't want their grandchildren to suffer. And so we're in this position where we feel like we're not good enough parents, where we're being criticized by others, right? So I think the most important thing is just be boundaried in the way that you want to parent your child. It's not easy, but really, I think it's time to break the stigma of having to solve your children's problems, because we know that that is not allowing them to become emotionally smart, to deal with their own emotions, to become resilient. So I think most importantly is you being sure of the parent that you want to be, and understanding that bringing challenges to your child's life is important, that validating their feelings is important, that allowing them to have challenges is actually useful and necessary, even at a really early stage. And more than not being a good parent because you're not soothing them immediately, I want you to think about the benefits that sitting with your child's discomfort and allowing your child to recognize their own discomfort is going to give them in the future. So I don't want you to think about the short-term consequences of not solving the problem right away, but connect with the long-term consequence or the long-term value that you want to teach your child. Yes, so I am going to type the answer. The Whole Brain Child is a really good book by Dan Siegel. All his books, I want to say, are important to read. He's an amazing, amazing psychologist. Thank you so much for being here today, for allowing me to answer a few questions and comments. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate all of you for listening to me. Please reach out if you need any help, any sort of guidance. We're here. You don't have to do this alone. Okay, we're definitely a place where you can come and ask questions and seek help if you need. Okay, so have a beautiful day, everyone, and I hope to see you all very soon.